In Nigeria, government has initiated laws to combat violence against women and girl child. There is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, VAP, which criminalizes violence against women and girl child, including rape, spousal battery, emotional, verbal, or psychological abuse. Harmful cultural practices such as female genital mutilation and harmful widowhood practices. There is also the Child Rights Act, which addresses violence against the girl child. The Criminal Code Act, Section 383, prescribes a maximum punishment of 3 years imprisonment for assault occasioning harm, as well as the Sharia Penal Code in some northern states to protect children against various forms of physical or psychological violence. Sadly, with all these laws in place, violence against women and girls is still widespread and might have assumed a new identity, but it is still violence against women. There are still victims of rape, human trafficking, spousal abuse, female genital mutilation, forced marriages for underage girls, while some argue that some of these terrible acts are embedded in different cultural constructs which needs vigorous enlightenment programs. Some are of the opinion that the enforcement of these laws by various institutions saddled with the responsibility, especially at the state and local government levels, leaves a lot to be desired. So, on Panorama today, we join in the 16-day activism which started on the 25th of November to end on the 10th of December 2024, asking questions about what we need to do differently, especially in community enlightenment on these unwholesome acts that has eaten deep into the fabric of society. You can follow this news broadcast live on our website at nta.ng/live and on our other social media handles displayed on the screen. For updates, I am Adeola Komiakere. Thank you for joining us on Panorama. And we begin with a cherry news. Port Harcourt Refinery has commenced production in the last, Port Harcourt Refinery has commenced production with about 200 trucks expected to be evacuated daily. NTA Energy correspondent Lydia Sampson, already in Port Harcourt, reports that all products ranging from petrol, diesel and kerosene are to be evaluated. The usual flare indicative of a fully energized refinery is already visible. This development is coming after a series of delays and missed deadlines, many say is significant. This is because the revival of the Port Harcourt refinery is expected to significantly boost Nigeria's domestic fuel supply. More details in our subsequent bulletin. Vice President Kashim Shettima has reaffirmed the federal government's dedication to advancing gender equality through transformative policies. He stated this during the Hannah Idowu Didiolu Awolowo Foundation webinar in commemoration of the 109th posthumous birthday of Chief Hannah Idowu Didiolu Awolowo, wife of late Chief Obafemi Awolowo. The Vice President emphasized the indispensable role of women in building a balanced and equitable society, calling for renewed national efforts to create an inclusive society where women are empowered to lead and thrive.
Are not only represented in our political and social spaces, but also empowered to occupy leadership positions where they can influence and make decisions. His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, embodies this commitment. This explains the representation of women in the government, praised by one of Nigeria's formidable women rights champions, Alhaji Abibatu Magadi. President Tinubu stands firsthand the transformative power of women in leadership.
At the same time, I believe that the key to addressing these challenges can be found in the inspiring example and the legacy that Oduwa HID Awolowo left for us. Her unique balance of grace and grit and her commitment to hard work and public service exemplify the transformative power of women. Her life was one of profound impact, one that transcended titles and accolades. She was a woman who understood that leadership is not defined by one's position.
Their legacy is not meant to be confined to history books or family stories. It is a legacy that demands to be shared, understood, and applied in Nigeria and beyond. Their ideals of visionary leadership, equality, and the pursuit of a better society are universal truths that resonate far beyond our borders.
Vice President Shettima paid glowing tribute to the late Hannah Didiolu Awolowo, describing her as a matriarch like no other and a jewel of inestimable value. He urged Nigerians to honor the legacy of women like Hannah Didiolu Awolowo and embrace a collective responsibility to empower women. And moving on, a new book reflecting on the 2023 Nigerian presidential election and the subsequent emergence of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has captured the attention of political observers with its attempt to clear the air on some misconceptions. The book, titled Personal Reflection on the 2023 Presidential Election, was officially launched at the State House, Abuja, in a ceremony attended by political leaders, scholars, and journalists. Ekene Ndulwe reports.
Intellectual discourse and celebration of the strides of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, with speakers applauding the book's ability to break down the complexity of the 2023 elections. The author says he was moved to delve into the research as a result of some dissenting voices after the election, adding that it was a well-deserved victory for President Tinubu.
The shout of those who lost the election was more than the winner. So it was like a subdued celebration from the winning party. So I was just like, what could have caused it? Despite the subdued celebration, the election was won fair and square. The president's victory was deserved.
So by the time you begin to study our dear president, you will understand that this is a go-getter. Remember that when he came out to run for this particular election, nobody gave him a chance.
Political leaders at the event did not merely reflect on the election itself, but offered a glimpse into what Nigeria should expect under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu.
As a professional banker, I know very well if any other person other than President Tinubu that inherited the portfolio of Nigeria, it would have been very difficult. I wouldn't imagine the situation would be in today.
I never shied away from confirming to Nigerians that he's going to put in his level best to ensure that their problems are reduced, their sufferings are ameliorated, and our economy gets to the recovery.
The president is trying. I can see he's all over the world looking for foreign investors, trying everything. But you see, Rome was not built in a day.
As the event concluded, the gathering expressed no doubt that the Tinubu-led administration is on the right path to economic prosperity, while urging Nigerians to support the administration to deliver the desired results. In Abuja, Ekene Ndulwe, NTA News.
And moving on to health matters, the future of cancer treatment in Nigeria is looking brighter as the country is set to establish 6 cutting-edge cancer treatment centers nationwide. This is coming from the Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Muhammad Ali Pate, during the oversight visit by the National Assembly Joint Committee on Health. Ignatius Ankwo reports.
The National Assembly Joint Committee on Health arrived at the Federal Ministry of Health and Social Welfare for their maiden oversight visit. Received by the Coordinating Minister, Professor Muhammad Ali Pate, the visit underscored the National Assembly's renewed commitment to holding the ministry accountable for its mandate. Led by Senator Ipalibo Harry Banigo, chairman of the Senate Committee on Health, the legislators came with clear intentions to assess the ministry's financial performance, ensure compliance with budgetary allocations, and identify hurdles in delivering critical health services to Nigerians.
Unaudited financial accounts for the year 2022. If it's available, we would like to have a copy of it.
Professor Pate presented a detailed report on the ministry's achievements, among them the commitment in the treatment of diseases such as malaria, typhoid, and the groundbreaking cancer treatment centers, made possible by the full disbursement of capital components of the 2023 health budget and 20% release and utilization of the 2024 capital allocation so far. He also noted strides in expanding national health insurance coverage to improve accessibility and affordability for millions of Nigerians.
And by May 2025, 3 of the 6 cancer infrastructure equipment will begin to be open.
But also in your budget, I believe you have something for cancer treatment.
And we'll ensure that that is factored in if we're to submit anything in the future.
Typhoid fever is out there as much as malaria. I just want to know what you're trying to do about that.
But we're escalating that in 2025 so that the medical relief program directed by the president actually benefits the poorest and most vulnerable.
The minister stressed the ministry's dedication to implementing the National Health Act of 2014, which continues to serve as a blueprint for health sector reforms. Ignatius Nkwo, NTA News.
The plan and strategy to achieve the minimum term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper 2025 to 2027 were x-rayed at a legislative and executive interaction with an optimism of achieving projections. At the session convened by the National Assembly Joint Committee, the Minister of Finance, alongside 2 other cabinet ministers and heads of revenue and generating agencies, explained the performance of the economy so far, which they said informed the 47.9 trillion naira 2025 budget proposal. National Assembly correspondent Lamiali has the report.
2025 budget and fiscal plans for the next 3 years.
The National Assembly is unwavering in its commitment to fostering prosperity in Africa and beyond.
We can build a resilient fiscal framework capable of supporting our developmental aspirations.
Only in the interest of this country, and this country must move forward.
The economic team is confident that, going by performance of revenue-generating agencies thus far, the 34.82 trillion naira revenue projection is achievable.
Under His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigeria has changed fundamentally so that productivity would increase, so that the economy would grow, jobs will be created, and poverty reduced.
The AKK project too would bring up companies along the corridor.
We've generated a total of 5,352 billion. For 2025, it is projected that we will expect to make an increase of 20%.
In general, we've exceeded all the targets set for non-oil tax, which is attestation to the impact of the reform being led by Mr. President, that the diversification of our economy from oil is yielding.
Concerns were, however, raised on the 2025 deficit as stakeholders called for mechanisms to block leakages for accountability.
Efficiency in electricity is critical to whatever you are going to do.
We are now in November on the verge of receiving another budget. Level of implementation of the budget remains at decimal 30%.
Suggestions were also made on the need to unlock more revenue sources to avoid borrowing. From the National Assembly, Lami Ali, NTA News.
And still on finance, Nigeria's GDP grew by 3.46% in the third quarter of 2024, up from the 3.19% in second quarter same year, as unemployment rate drops to 4.6% in second quarter. Musa Abubakar reports.
By the National Bureau of Statistics says that gross domestic product had reached 20.12 trillion naira in real terms. Growth was driven by the services sector, contributing 53.58% to GDP. Key contributors include crop production, 26.51%, trade, 14.78%, and telecommunication, 13.94%, with the non-oil sector accounting for 94.43% of GDP. The oil sector grew by 5.17%, with production at 1.47 million barrels per day. Meanwhile, unemployment rate dropped to 4.3% in second quarter 2024 from 5.3% in first quarter, according to the MBS. Labor force participation rose to 79.5%, with rural areas 83.2%, surpassing urban areas 77.2%. Youth unemployment, ages 15 to 34, was 6.5%. The highest wage employment fell to 14.4%, while informal employment increased to 93%. Time-related underemployment declined to 9.2%.
Time for us to take a break. Panorama will return shortly.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Thank you for staying with us. 1 in every 3 women worldwide suffer violence. According to the United Nations, these alarming statistics underscores the urgency for collective and effective intervention to put an end to violence against women and girls, which can take many forms, including physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. Diana Ajali will tell us more.
According to United Nations statistics, 38% of murders of women are committed by intimate partners. 200 million girls and women have undergone female genital mutilation, according to World Health Organization. Why 1 in 5 women experience violence during pregnancy?
Those who do these acts of violence, there's nothing being done against them. Because of the way our society works, they tend to get away with it.
As Africans, we all believe that a woman is supposed to be submissive to her husband. So mostly men just take that advantage, and the next action for me to take is violence.
Violence against women is not just a women's issue, but a human rights issue. It is a crisis that affects families, communities, and societies as a whole. Breaking the silence and stopping the stigmatization surrounding violence against women. Working together to create a world where women and girls can live free from fear is said to be the solution. But how achievable is this?
We should come together and have a multi-stakeholder approach where everyone is tackling this thing. This scourge, everyone is deciding that it is my business.
This year's theme, Orange the World, Fund, Respond, Prevent, Collect, highlights the need by the United Nations to eliminate violence against women by 2030. SDG 5, ensure access to justice and services for survivors, as well as promote gender equality and empowerment. The day also serves as a reminder of the urgent need to address the pervasive issues of violence against women and girls worldwide. In Lagos, Diana Ajale, NTA News.
And to talk more on eliminating violence against women and the girl child, I have Betty Abba, a child and human rights activist. You're welcome to Panorama.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. Now, the United Nations says that every 10 minutes a woman is killed, and this violence occurs in workplaces, online spaces, and this, from that report, the solution lies in robust responses. Now, with the laws already, put in place, why does violence against women still persist? Is it, the lack of enlightenment or enforcement?
I would say mostly the lack of enforcement.
Okay.
It's not enough to have laws. What makes the difference between a working society and a lawless society is the application of the law. We have all kinds of laws in Nigeria. They're mostly unimplemented, mostly unenforced. We have, like you mentioned earlier, the VAP Act, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act of 2015. But most of the time, they are not implemented. And one of the biggest factors is laxity on the part of law enforcement. Because if people who have been accused of crimes have not been prosecuted, they have not been shown consequences, there will not be deterrence. And so people think that they can commit crime, they can even kill and walk away.
Go away with it.
So that is a major issue that we have. So we need to strengthen our institution, mostly law enforcement. There's a lot of dysfunctionality, especially in the police force. I work in sexual violence, GBV, and we see a lot of that most of the time. When you have a situation where people win cases not because they are right or wrong, but because of the superior financial power they have. When justice goes to the highest bidder, it doesn't work. The citizenry needs to repose their trust in the institution, in the police force, in the judiciary.
Okay.
We need to have a sense that when you are hurt, you can go to the systems. There are support systems for you where you can report and you can get justice. So we really need to sort that out.
Okay. Now, let's identify some acts considered as acts of violence against women that are still in practice, in communities today, apart from the ones we already heard.
Of course, there's a lot of psychological violence. You know that the economy is in a very terrible state. And in so many homes, in so many setups, people who are losing their jobs, people whose businesses are crumbling, somehow believe that their house help, their wives have automatically turned witches. We'll have a trending story on, a trending report on Twitter now of witchcraft branding and killing in Cross River State, where women have been accused of witchcraft and killed. And this has happened for 5-6 years now, and not a single one of the culprits has been brought to book. So we have witchcraft branding, we have psychological abuse, we even have spousal rape, which our laws have not criminalized, and people, husbands get away with it all of the time, and it's a major thing that we have to look at.
Okay. Now, you just talked of spousal abuse.
Yes.
Now, many frown when it is physical, but, think verbal is harmless in some communities. Is this right?
It's not harmless. We do not have to normalize violence in any form.
Okay.
We have to come to a point in our society where there's a lot of consciousness between what is right and what is wrong. And verbal abuse is a criminal action. And people have to be told that you cannot do that. I run a shelter, and what you've seen over the time, I run a women's shelter, and what you've seen over time is women coming in who have for a very long time normalize certain behaviors from their spouses, certain violence, until it gets to some point where their neighbors even have to intervene. Verbal assault, physical assault are the same thing, and they have to be criminalized. People have to know that this is wrong and that there are consequences for their actions.
Okay. These victims of all these forms of abuses, they oftentimes, keep such acts, to themselves for fear of, stigmatization and societal condemnation. Now, what should be the protective mechanism, for them in this case?
It's sensitization. People have to be sensitized. The fact that you are dying silently in your marriage is not right. People have to get over the fact that they can overcome societal stigma. Now, so many persons are dying or have died in abusive relationships, in abusive marriages, because they do not want to step out because for the fear of stigmatization. But I'll tell you that it's better to be a single mother, a divorcee that's alive, than a dead wife. So we have to come to the point where societal stigma, all forms of stigmatization, people overcome it.
Okay.
And like I say, I run a women's shelter, and it takes so many people such a long time to be able to come out of abusive relationship because they are afraid. And of course, apart from stigma, the fear of insecurity, especially when you have children in such relationship. I mean, the fear of tomorrow, how am I going to cope? And that's why there's a need to empower women educationally, skills development, so that they can be independent and take decisions for their own life, for their own safety.
Okay, thank you, Betty Alba. That's the much we can take on this. It's a very passionate topic, but we hope that robust responses will pick up from here on. Thank you for your time with us.
My pleasure.
And that is Panorama from the Lagos Network Center of Nigerian Television Authority. Thank you for staying with us. I am Adeola Komiakere.